I've just put the words body language into Google and it tells me that over 3 billion pages contain the term. Now I've no idea how many sites that represents instead of pages, but 90% of them will probably tell you that only 7% of communication is to do with the actual words we use, 38% is vocal tone, and 55% is body language. This is the 55-38-7 ratio that you've probably all seen before or heard about. And I'm here to tell you that it's rubbish. It's wrong, it's twaddle, tripe, baloney, hogwash, balderdash. It's a myth. And first I'll give you the common sense objection to it, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the experiments that were behind the figures. The common sense objection is just think about it for a moment. If it was true, if only 7% of communication was about words, you and I could go overseas to a country where we didn't speak the language and understand 93% of what was being said to us. We could turn the sound down on the TV and still understand 55% of what was going on, and quite obviously we can't. You can turn the TV sound down while a soap opera is on, and sure, you'll tell whether the two people in the scene are having an argument or whether it's a love scene, but beyond that you won't have any idea. And yet it is accepted uncritically by almost everyone. Why? Well, I think a number of reasons. Firstly, it's a soundbite, it's simple, it sounds good, it's easy to remember. But these things develop a momentum of their own, and if something is stated as being true by enough people, then everybody else will just accept it as being true. After all, if all these supposed experts tell me it's true, it must be. Well, most of these experts haven't got the faintest idea where the figures actually came from. But I do, and when you finish watching this video, you will as well. The figures come from two experiments run by an Iranian-born professor called Abraham Mehrabian at UCLA, that's the University of California at Los Angeles, in 1967, using female undergraduates. Now, they were shown 9 words, 3 of which were chosen to convey liking, honey, dear, and thanks, 3 to convey neutrality, really, maybe, and oh, and 3 to convey disliking, don't, brute, and terrible. Now these words were spoken with different voice tones, and the guinea pigs were asked to guess the emotions behind them. And Mehrabian found that vocal tone was a far better indicator of emotion than the actual words themselves. That's it, that's the first experiment. Not that impressive, not as impressive as you thought already, is it really? Now the second experiment, the guinea pigs were asked to listen to a recording of a single word, maybe, in 3 tonalities to convey liking, neutrality, and disliking, and they were then shown black and white photographs of female faces conveying the same 3 emotions. Then they were asked to guess the emotions conveyed by the recordings, the photos, and then both in combination. And the study indicated that the photos drew more accurate responses than the voices by a ratio of 3 to 2. The 2 results were added together to get 55-38-7, and well, there is no and, because that's it. That's all you've got. So let's just recap this, shall we? Firstly, you're talking about adding together the results of 2 studies that can't be added together. Secondly, the experiments only used young women who were college undergraduates. So no older women or women who had not been to college, and no men of any description whatsoever. Thirdly, it concentrated purely on facial expressions and ignored such things such as hand gestures and posture and any other aspect of body language. Fourth, it relied on black and white photographs rather than real people demonstrating body language. And finally, it used the extremely artificial context of individual words rather than sentences, which are the real building blocks of conversation. Now, if you still think that the 55-38-7 ratio has any validity, I suggest you go away and lie down in a darkened room for a while. Now, to be fair to Dr. Mehrabian, he should make it clear that he has never agreed with the grandiose claims made in his name and never intended his findings to be applied to conversation in general, never mind presenting or public speaking. He was simply pointing out that if there was ever a mismatch between what was being said and how it was being said, the how would be believed, and it was other people that took his figures and blew them out of all proportion and misused them. Now look, this isn't to make out that body language isn't important. It is. It's critically important to presenters and public speakers. And your posture, for example, is going to be the main thing that builds an audience's perception of your confidence as soon as you get on your feet, before you even open your mouth. But in terms of the message you're getting across, body language is not as important as the words you use, which is why the 55-38-7 myth drives me crazy. Unfortunately, most presenters give hardly any thought to the words they are going to use. When they're preparing a presentation, they'll simply get the slide deck, flick through the slides the night before and say, oh yeah, on slide 1 I'll talk about A, on slide 2 I'll mention B, on slide 3 I'll discuss C. And then they'll hope that when they get on their feet the next morning, somehow the magic words to perfectly communicate A, B and C will just pop into their mind. Now, English is an extremely vibrant and varied language, and there are at least a dozen ways of making any particular point. Now, depending on what your objective is and who your audience are, one of those a dozen ways will be better than the other 11. When you get on your feet, at the very point where you may be feeling under a little bit of pressure, you're feeling a little bit apprehensive, you're under the spotlight, what are the chances that the word fairy will come along and pop the one perfect way of making your point into your mouth rather than one of the other 11? They're pretty low, I would think. Which is why presenters need to give an incredible amount of thought to exactly what they're going to say. Your role model should be Sir Winston Churchill, the man who, in President Kennedy's fantastic phrase, mobilized the English language and sent it into battle. You know, from his first speech to his last, he was fanatical about preparation and would work just as hard in his 70s as he did in his 20s. He would spend days preparing a speech, hours sometimes just mulling over one particular sentence or phrase in his mind until he got it exactly right. He regarded each one as a work of art, and he once wrote, "I do not compose quickly. Everything is worked out by hard labour and frequent polishing. I intend to polish till it glitters." Because think about it. You use one set of words and you achieve your objective. Use another set and you don't. Say something in one way and you get the sale. Say something in another and the customer goes with a competitor. Open a conversation in one way, you get the girl. Say something else and you watch her leave the coffee shop on the arms of another man. So next time you're thinking about a presentation, think about exactly how you're going to make your argument. Mull over a dozen different ways of making each important point. Try different phrases, say the sentences in different ways, write it down, learn it, rehearse it. In other words, or in Winston Churchill's words, polish it until it glitters.